What's up, everybody? It's LaMuerteBlanca, and we are back for another Borderlands 3 character build video. This time around, we're working with Zane and his Bulletproof Mr. Freeze build. Before I get into the specific build, I thought Zane was a very interesting character looking at his skill trees because even more so than some of the other characters, based on how you build Zane, he could be a completely different character. I mean, you can take him into the Juggernaut realm, to the run and gun realm, all the way over to just pure damage. So Zane is very interesting, especially with his ability to use two action skills at once in lieu of a grenade. There are going to be a number of very interesting builds that you can take with Zane. So starting off with my Bulletproof Mr. Freeze, this deals primarily with keeping your shield high and getting the associated buffs with keeping that shield high, and also dealing a lot of cryo damage to that enemy. Cryo damage having an impact on your shield as well, and those associated buffs. Starting off, we put 5 points into ready for action. Zane gains improved shield recharge rate and shield recharge delay. This is going to be a very integral skill for this build, as you'll see a lot of the skills that we use for this particular build deal with how high Zane's shield is, and the higher shield, the better the buff. So of course we need better shield recharge rate and recharge delay. Coming into that first shield skill is Adrenaline. Zane gains increased action skill cooldown rate. This bonus is based on the amount of shield he has. The more percent full, the greater the bonus. So based on the amount of shield he has will be a recurring theme throughout this build. The higher his shield, the better the buff, regardless of what the buff may be. So that is why ready for action is so important. Other than recharge rate and recharge delay, you also need a better shield pool in order to absorb more damage so you can still get those buffs. Because if you don't have a shield, you're not getting those buffs. That is why we went with Hardy stock. Zane gains increased maximum shield capacity. Very simple, but also very important for this build, and also very effective considering you're getting 30% extra shield. Combine that with a turtle shield, assuming they're coming back to Borderlands 3, you're gonna have a pretty nice shield. Coming down to the next line, we have stiff upper lip. Whenever Zane is damaged, he gains damage resistance against that damage type. That is going to pair well with Hardy stock, because with stiff upper lip, you take any damage, whether it's your shield or your health, you're getting that 16% damage resistance, which is going to allow you to absorb more damage, which is going to keep your shield active longer, which will allow you to hold on to the buffs that we'll be talking about throughout the course of this build. Moving over to Brain Freeze. Now this is our first cryo skill, the Mr. Freeze portion of this particular build. Whenever Zane scores a critical hit on an enemy, there is a chance they will be slowed. This effect stacks until the target is frozen. 20% slow chance for each critical hit. So if you have an SMG or a high fire rate weapon, then chances are you're going to be going around freezing quite a few targets. So this is going to be a very effective skill regarding the ice portion of this particular build. Coming down to the next line, we get another one of Zane's very useful shield skills, as well as both our augments, but starting with our skill, Confident Competence. While Zane's shields are active, he gains increased gun damage and accuracy. This bonus is based on the amount of shield he has. The more percent full, the greater the bonus. So very similar to what we have for Adrenaline, where it's action skill cooldown rate. The higher our shield, the better the gun damage and the better the accuracy. So this is going to be huge when it comes to our shield recharge rate and delay, our damage resistance that we're receiving, as well as our overall shield pool that we decided to buff in the earlier levels. Coming over to our first action skill augment, Nanites or Some Shite. Zane and his allies gain health regen, increased reload speed, and greatly improved shield recharge delay while near his barrier. The lower his health, the more health is regenerated. So this is a very important skill for this build, specifically for the shield recharge delay. Keep the shield recharge delay low, which means our shield will recharge faster, which means we'll be able to take advantage of those shield buffs. Our second action skill augment is All Rounder. Zane's barrier becomes a dome covering all sides. Now this is just going to be a very useful skill in general, because if we're in the barrier and we're getting the shield recharge delay and we're getting the improved shield charge rate and delay that we already have, on top of the buffs that we're getting for action skill cooldown and gun damage, we're just going to be dealing that much more punishment, because we're not taking damage, but we're getting the buffs because our shield is high, so we're going to be dealing out more damage. Going to our skill, which of course, if you haven't guessed by now, we will be using barrier, but interesting about barrier is you'll drop a deployable barrier barrier that blocks incoming projectiles. Zane and his allies can shoot through the barrier, dealing increased gun damage. And I specifically mentioned the increased gun damage because that is going to pair very nicely with the increased gun damage that we have here, as well as with All-Rounder, we can shoot within that barrier in any direction and still get that increased gun damage. Coming down to the next line, Futility Belt. Zane gains resistance to non-elemental damage. Kill skill. After killing an enemy, all elemental damage Zane takes is converted to non-elemental damage. So if we kill an enemy, all of our damage that we will be taking for the next 8 seconds will be one specific type. If someone shoots us within that 8 seconds, then we're going to get a 16% damage resistance to non-elemental damage, which will stack with the extra 15% that we have here, which again, think about all the shield buffs that we already have on top of the ability to keep that shield pool even larger because we have that 30%. You guys can see that we're just building our shield up, making us bulletproof essentially because we're not taking any health damage. And then all those shield buffs are going to allow us to be more effective on the offensive as well. Going into our second cryo skill is Best Served Cold. It's a kill skill. Whenever Zane kills an enemy, they create a cryo nova, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. This skill has a short cooldown. It does not specifically state whether or not cryo novas have a chance to freeze. However, based on my assumption and history with Borderlands, where incinerate novas or shock novas or any of those other types of novas do have a chance to apply a status effect, I'm assuming that cryo nova will have a chance to freeze, which will then pair very nicely with brain freeze. So not only are we going to be getting potential freezes with the crits, but also with the novas with this particular kill skill. Cooldown's only 3 seconds, so we should be getting that cryo nova fairly frequently, assuming we can get kills with all the extra gun damage and the other buffs that we already have. Coming down to the next line, another one of our Mr. Freeze themed cryo skills, Refreshment. Whenever Zane damages a frozen enemy with his weapon, he gains some of that damage back as health. So this is essentially a lifesteal, assuming that we're able to freeze enemies with Best Served Cold and Brain Freeze. But the thing that really connects and brings everything together between the Bulletproof and the Mr. Freeze portions of this particular build is Calm, Cool, and Collected. Whenever Zane freezes an enemy, his shield instantly begins recharging. If Zane's shields are already full, he regenerates health for a few seconds. If Zane's health is already full, his action skill cooldowns and durations are immediately reset. So if we freeze an enemy, not even kill a frozen enemy, but just freeze them. So whether that be with a Nova, whether that be with a Brain Freeze, whether that be with just a Cryo Malawon weapon that we happen to find, if we freeze an enemy, then our shield will immediately begin recharging, which again will give us the gun damage and accuracy buff on top of the action skill cooldown buff. And if our shields are full and our health are full, then we get immediate action skill cooldown reset, which means we can throw that barrier down to get the gun damage by shooting through the barrier on top of the extra shield recharge delay that we'll have by being inside the barrier, plus the health regen by being inside the barrier. So as you can see, this all stacks up to essentially a shield focused tank, if you will, that can freeze the enemy. Coming down into a nether shield specific skill, Zane gains increased accuracy and handling. The longer his shield is full, the greater the bonus. So if we are inside our barrier and we're not taking any damage, the longer that shield stays full by us hanging out in that barrier with a stack every second for 15 seconds, we get accuracy and handling, improving our effectiveness on the offensive in order to help take out those enemies and get those necessary kill skills that we've been talking about, specifically the Best Served Cold kill skill, which will give us more cryo novas. Not specific to this build per se, however, a extremely useful skill, especially depending on your shield that you're carrying. Distributed Denial. Zane's barrier gains the effects of his currently equipped shield mod. Additionally, shield effects are applied to all allies near the barrier. Bonuses to Zane are reduced. Zane's barrier gets the shield mod. If you have one of the shields from Borderlands 2 that takes damage but replenishes your ammo, as your barrier gets shot, it will replenish your ammo. So it's just adding awesome new skills and effects. On top of that, it applies to all allies as well. So my assumption based on reading this is your allies will get their shield mod plus the barrier shield mod, which will then double their effectiveness as well based on the combination there. So awesome skill that I think is going to be great when it comes to benefiting the survivability of your entire team. Moving over to the double agent skill tree we have, of course, the digiclone. Spawn a digiclone of Zane. This clone stays in place but distracts and fires at enemies. So this still goes in line with our Bulletproof and our Mr. Freeze build by adding various skills in order to help continue the buffs that we have set for our shield and our ability to freeze. We start out with Borrow Time. Zane gains increased action skill duration for every action skill. So this is, of course, assuming that you're using the barrier and the clone at the same time, or if you just want to use one at a time, you can do that as well. You're getting 15% extra action skill duration per active action skill. So that'll be 30% if you have both out at the same time. Then we come over to synchronicity. Whenever one or more of Zane's action skills are active, he gains increased gun damage for each active action skill. So this will help us get that Cryo Nova kill skill more often if we have both our action skills up, plus the gun damage that we're getting by shooting through the barrier. 20% per active action skill. So that's 40% if we have the clone out, if we have the barrier out, plus the buffs that we're getting by shooting through the barrier and by having our shield full, the accuracy and the gun damage buff that we'll be getting with that as well, all in the hopes of us getting more Cryo Novas and then freezing enemies, which will then either reset our action skills or immediately start the regen of our shield or our health, depending on what particular situation we're in at that time, building up that tank archetype that we're kind of pushing for when it comes to this build. Then we come down to Fractal Frags. The digiclone throws a copy of Zane's current grenade mod when it's first activated. If the digiclone is killed, it drops a free grenade. Kill skill. Killing an enemy while the digiclone is active gives the clone a chance to throw a grenade. If you have a cryo grenade, this would be the perfect complement to this particular build. However, I mainly added this skill because we're using 2 action skills in lieu of a grenade, so might as well use your grenades for something, and then you'll be using those when you drop your digiclone, because you won't be able to throw an actual grenade because you have both the barrier and the digiclone available. Our first action skill augment for the digiclone becomes available once we get to this line with binary system. Whenever Zane swaps places with his clone, a Cryo Nova is triggered around Zane and his clone. This being another opportunity for us to get a freeze, which would then allow us to get all of the associated buffs and benefits from freezing an enemy. Coming down to the following line, we get Schadenfreude, and I'm sorry, my German is terrible. I really hope I said that correctly. Whenever the clone takes damage, Zane's shield is restored by a portion of that damage. Another skill that is going to help keep our shield up and give us those buffs that we would get by having a fuller shield. And finally, we come to Quick Breather. Whenever Zane swaps places with his clone, his shield immediately begins recharging. So let's say that your shield is low and you don't see it recharging anytime soon. Switch places with your clone, then drop your barrier so it's around you and no one can hit you. So your shield will begin recharging, all your buffs will be coming back. You'll get the buffs from synchronicity and borrow time because you have both your action skills out on top of everything else that we discussed in terms of the gun damage by shooting through the barrier, to the Cryo Novas that you'll start getting because you're going to be killing enemies, to everything else that this build will essentially offer. The Bulletproof Mr. Freeze build for Zane is going to be a great build for those of you that want to play Zane but want a tankier type character that has better survivability. At the same time, if you like just freezing things, then of course this would be a great build because there are a lot of benefits that Zane has by using his ability to freeze. So this is the Bulletproof Mr. Freeze. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to drop a like, comment, tell me what you think about this particular build, as well as subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to turn on your notifications so you can catch all of the future LaMuerteBlanca content. You can catch the live stream on Mixer, Twitch, as well as here on YouTube. I'm LaMuerteBlanca, and I'll catch you guys next time.